Welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and we're going to be doing one more spoiler video for March of the Machine, talking about the new legendary creatures. As suspected, we got a whole bunch here, so there's a lot to talk about. And I wanted to do one more for a very specific reason, because in the last video, I talked about the Praetor cycle coming out in this set, and I was kind of hoping the new Brask would be a little more enticing to go after, because of course the first two Brasks weren't very good, and we finally got that one spoiled. So I wanted to make another video talking about it and some other legendary creatures as well. So let's take a look at it. Brask, 2 red Phyrexian Praetor 4/4 with first strike. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Brask deals 1 damage to target opponent and add 1 red. Hey, that's pretty good. Right out of the gate. So without even looking at the back, that's a really good ability that you could very easily build around, right? You could do a mono red instant sorcery theme. Again, I don't know how much it's going to fit with the rest of the card, but dealing 1 damage to target opponent and you get to add a red. So very Bergy-esque. I guess Bergy might be a good fit in this deck as well. That seems pretty good. You could very easily do a mono red storm theme there. Pretty darn good. Of course, it's going to be a transform commander, so we're going to pay 1 red, exile Brask, then return to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control, activate only as a sorcery, and only if you cast 3 or more instant or sorcery spells this turn. Ooh, boy. So, again, the 1 red mana, obviously, that's pretty easy, but 3 or more instant or sorcery. So obviously we are very much in an instant or sorcery theme. Now, the good thing here is, in order to get this, that seems like a lot, but remember, you're adding the red. So you are going to want a lot of those red cantrips and whatnot in here. Obviously, you're getting the added benefit of dealing damage to your opponents, which is going to be great. Again, like I say all the time, a card like Chandra's Incinerator might be a fantastic fit here whenever you're dealing that direct damage to your opponents. You can then, obviously, non-combat damage, any sort of that non-combat damage stuff is going to work great here. And then you obviously can then deal damage to creatures as well. So that probably is a slam dunk in this deck. So I don't think this is super difficult to do. Obviously, the last instant and sorcery, the third instant and sorcery that you cast, is then going to add red mana. So you can use that red mana to transform your commander. So yeah, that's not bad. Not bad at all. Let's take a look at the back, though. And it is the Great Work, of course, the Saga, and Chapter 1. The Great Work deals 3 damage to target opponent and each creature they control. That's pretty good. Not bad. Not bad. And keep in mind here, you are just going to be finished, right? Because this is going to get exiled and then come back into play. So you are just finished casting 3 instants and sorceries in the turn. So you could certainly play into that even more so, where you could even, like, one of the sorceries you cast is maybe a Pyroclasm, right? So I've dealt 2 damage already to every creature, and now I can deal an additional 3 damage. Some guy who's got a lot of big creatures, now I'm dealing a total of 5 damage this turn to all of those creatures, right? Target opponent and each creature they control. Again, fits really nicely with the Chandra's Incinerator and that whole theme of, non-combat damage, dealing damage directly to your opponents, all that kind of stuff. Pretty good. That's a great ability. Moving on, Chapter 2, create 3 treasure tokens. Okay, not super overwhelming, but obviously that's just good. Chapter 3, until end of turn, you may cast instant and sorcery spells from any graveyard. If a spell cast this way would be put into a graveyard, exile it instead. And then you, of course, exile it and return it to play on the face-up side. So you're casting instant and sorcery spells from any... You're very much in an instant sorcery theme here, except in mono red, which we haven't really seen. Again, Bergy would be the only... And that's not really an instant and sorcery theme. It kind of is, but it's kind of not. This really is just a straight-up instant and sorcery theme in mono red. Does that fit Brask? I don't know. If you look at the other Brasks, there's no real commonality there. I mean, whatever. You're doing it from anyone's graveyard, but obviously doing it from your own graveyard is fantastic, right? I've cast that Grape Shot earlier in the turn, or earlier when I flip my commander, and now I can cast it again from my graveyard. And again, fits the storm theme obviously really, really well. Fits the storm theme really well, in fact. And I don't know. How easy is it going to be? Again, if I throw the Bergie in there, I throw the Chandra's Incinerator, any other, whenever I cast instants and sorceries, which obviously there's a lot of support there. Just in mono red, there is a fair amount of support there. Doing that, another really great fit in this deck might be, what's that artifact? Came out, I think, in Battle Bond. I can't remember the name of it. Is it like Sentinel Tower or something like that? And that was sort of a little bit of a fringe card that doesn't see a ton of play. I saw it used for a little while. People were trying to make it work. It wants you to be casting instant during your turn. And that is obviously something you're going to be doing a lot here. So that might be a great fit in this deck as well. Pretty good. I'm pretty impressed here. I like it. It is certainly, without a doubt, going to be the most popular of the Brasks. You're in that Storm Spellslinger theme, which is relatively popular. I think you have a lot of support here, even just in mono red. I like what it's doing. And again, the way this is worded, it says until end of turn, right? So what you can do is you get the chapter 3, then it flips over again, right? And then you can start casting those instants and sorceries from graveyard, which will then trigger your commander's ability. And man, if you have enough mana, it would be very easy to then flip it back over again on the very same turn, right? So you could really go to town with this. I think you could make a pretty powerful deck with this version of Brask. I'm happy. I think a lot of people will be happy with this iteration of Brask that we got. All right, let's look at some more commanders. And we got another transform commander here, Rona, Herald of Invasion. And of course, the original Rona being black and blue. I used to have a Rona deck. And this one looks like it's going to be black and blue as well, because it's a blue card but has a black ability, right? So 1 and a blue human wizard, 1/3. Whenever you cast a legendary spell, untap Rona, Herald of Invasion. Okay. Obviously, we want lots of legendary spells. Doesn't have to be creatures. You can be casting legendary artifacts, enchantments, all that good stuff. The original Rona was, it was a historic theme. I actually didn't build the deck that way at all. But the historic theme, legendary theme, there's some overlap there, obviously. Your commander is looting, which, whenever you have a commander that is looting, there's lots you can do there. I talked about Tellurian Kraken in a video, one of my 5 cards videos that I did, where if you have a commander that has a tap ability that is drawing, Tellurian Kraken is a fantastic fit there because, of course, I tap my commander, I loot, triggers my Tellurian Kraken, I can pay the 1 and then untap it to use it, and I can keep doing that. As much mana as I have, I can keep looting, right? And then obviously also, if I happen to cast a legendary spell, it also can untap my commander. So you can really go to town there. And again, the draw triggers, the discard triggers, that alone, without even looking at the backside of this, there's a ton I can build around here. I can put all of that blue stuff that wants me to be drawing cards or drawing my second card each turn, and I can put all that black stuff that wants me to be discarding. And there's lots of great discard support in blue, but also probably more so in black. But our commander also transforms 5 and a Phyrexian black mana. Transform Rona, activate only as a sorcery. And on the back, Rona Tellurian Obliterator and Phyrexian Wizard 5/5 with Trample. And I'm just going to guess, looking at this art, okay, and the name, Obliterator, and it's now a Phyrexian, and I think that's might be what they're doing. Again, I talked about the Pelucranos sort of being like the art lent it to being like Wormcoil Engine-y, like they were combining a legendary creature with a creature, like a Phyrexian creature that already exists. This looks like a Phyrexian Obliterator, right? They got the name, the Phyrexian type. It looks like Rona is transforming into a Phyrexian Obliterator here. That's what it looks like, right? Trample 5/5. That's right. So whenever a source deals damage to Rona, Tellurian Obliterator, that source's controller exiles a card from their hand at random. So we are doing the if it deals damage thing that the Phyrexian Obliterator is doing. If it's a land card, you may put it onto the battlefield under your control. Otherwise, you may cast without paying its mana cost. Wow. Okay, that's pretty good. So whenever a source deals damage to Rona. So the interesting, obviously, if you attack, your opponent blocks. they're going to be dealing damage to your Rona, right? If you want your opponents to be dealing damage to your Rona here, but you can deal damage to your own Rona, right? Whenever a source deals damage to Rona, that source's controller. So if I deal damage to my own Rona, right? Let's play out that scenario. I'm the controller of that source, obviously. So I'm going to exile a card from my hand at random, right? Now the random part, obviously, that is why they put the random in there, right? Because the random is going to make it so that you can't easily, like I can have an expropriate in my hand and just exile that. And then I can cast it without paying its mana cost, right? That's probably the best way to go here is I want to deal damage to my own commander, right? Because I am the controller of that source. So now I'm going to exile a card from my hand. Now, of course, it's at random, but still there's not really any downside here because if it's a land card, I put it onto the battlefield, which is a little weird for a Dimir card to be doing. If it's anything else, now I just get to cast it for free. That seems really good. So that's probably, again, the front side, there's a lot you can do there, but doesn't super fit with what the back is doing, right? So I guess you probably could either build around the front more. I mean, you could put a little bit of support for the front, but more so you could build around the back where I can deal damage to my own Rona, right? Because whenever a source deals damage to Rona, you're the controller of that source. If I have like a pinger, right? I have a pinger in my deck. I can ping my own commander. I'm the controller of the source dealing damage to it. So now I get to exile a card from my hand. It's at random, but if it's a land, it goes into play, which is great. Otherwise, I just get to cast it for free. That's probably the best way to go with this commander. Wow. Pretty interesting. A lot better than the original Rona, that's for sure. Again, the backside's great. Lots you can build around there. Front side's great as well. Lots you can build around there. Really great commander. All right, we are moving on to Inga and Asika. That's a really interesting pairing. And how about this art? What's going on here? Looks like they're riding a chariot that's being pulled by cats or something. Very interesting art for sure. Of course, Inga is, Inga Runai's famously that not great mono blue commander that I did on my Underwhelming Commander series. It's a super tough one to build around. Asika, obviously, not underwhelming at all. Super powerful, popular commander in the format, 5-color commander. And we are combining them. Obviously, even though Asika is a 5-color commander, the front side's only green. So we are combining, I imagine, maybe just the front green side with Inga here, right? Human God, which is very interesting. So we got a human and a god hanging out together, and it's a 4/4. And I will just point out, if your commander is a god and it is not indestructible already, put that Tyrite Sanctum in your deck. Tyrite Sanctum goes in this deck. I don't know if this is going to be indestructible. I doubt it. But put a Tyrite Sanctum in your deck because it is very easy to make your commander indestructible with that if it's already a god. So, creatures you control have vigilance and tap, add 1 mana of any color. Spend this only to cast a creature spell. Okay, so that's all pretty good. I mean, obviously, you're going to have lots of creatures in your deck. Probably you could. I mean, creatures you control have vigilance, and that ability means your commander has that ability as well, right? So your commander is a mana dork. The fact that your creatures have vigilance, there's a lot you can do here, right? The fact that your creatures are all going to be mana dorks is great for a number of reasons. Again, the more fringe version that you might want to look at is creatures that want to be tapped. So Surge Spanner, for example, is a personal favorite of mine. That's a creature that wants to be tapped. And making all your creatures mana dorks is a great way to take advantage of those abilities, right? Inspired abilities as well is a reason you want your creatures to be tapped, or the untap ability. If you want to look at creatures that have an untap ability, that might work here great as well, because you can tap them to add the color, and then you can untap them to use that ability. I mean, you're really sort of, in a way, and there could be some combo potential here, right? Grand Architect and Pillapalla, right, being a sort of a famous infinite mana combo that does that with the untap ability. So you might be able to get some shenanigans going there. Of course, the mana that you're adding can only be used to cast a creature spell, so that's going to hinder you a little bit. What else are we doing here, though? Whenever you cast a creature spell, if 3 or more mana from creatures was spent to cast it, draw a card. Okay. So, yeah, you're just going to want a very creature-heavy deck here. You're going to, like, what you're going to be doing a lot is tapping your creatures to add mana that you can then use to cast creature spells, which then is going to draw you a card if 3 or more mana, right? So you're going to want to do that so you get the card draw. That's not fantastic card draw. I suppose there is some possibilities here for some combo potential going off and what have you. I think untappers is going to be like Seedborn Muse and stuff is going to be really important here. You're going to be tapping down your team a lot on your turn to cast those creature spells. You don't want to have all your creatures tapped down on other people's turns. I mean, you could get in some shenanigans here for sure. You could definitely make it almost a Prophet of Kruphix type of deck if you get that Seedborn Muse in play and maybe a lot of flash creatures, so you can be doing it on your other opponent's turns. You could definitely get into some shenanigans here for sure. Though I like the idea of I'm tapping my team. Like Throne of the Godfair is another fantastic fit here where I'm tapping very likely I'm going to have a lot of tapped creatures on the end step. Then I can, that can be a nice win con in the deck where I can now start draining all my opponents. So I think that's a fantastic fit here. There's a lot you could do here. You could do the tapping theme. The Vigilance can play into it a little bit. Even though this seems very basic on its face with what it's doing, I'm just turning my creatures into mana dorks that are casting more creatures than I'm drawing cards. I think there's actually a lot you can do here, especially with the tapping theme. All right, let's move on. And we got Simone and Dinah. And this is a really interesting combination here. Of course, Simone being the Simic commander that, drawing cards, putting lands in play, typical Simic stuff. And then Dinah being the, life gain sort of aristocracy type of commander, right? And we've combined them, so we have a Sultai commander now. Black, blue, and a green human dryad 3/4. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Wow, that's pretty good all on its own. Again, you could make a whole deck just around that. The draw your second card thing has a ton of support in all of these colors, in fact. And I just talked about Gixian Puppeteer, I believe, in a video recently where that's doing that. So that's going to be a slam dunk in this deck. Also can get your commander out of the graveyard because it's mana value 3 or less. So that's for sure going to go in this deck. We also have draw your second card each turn in green. The Jolriel, right, is going to do that. And we also have a lot in blue. So there's a whole bunch of draw your second card each turn stuff that will already automatically fit into this deck. Obviously, you're gaining life as well, so we can do the life gain stuff here. Obviously, any of that stuff that works in Dinah and anything else is going to work here. Also, though, tap, sacrifice another creature, draw a card. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. If you control 8 or more lands, repeat the process once. Oh boy, so now we are in a little bit of a aristocrats theme. And I mean, a sad robot, again, is a creature that sort of wants to be sacrificed and draws you a card when it dies. So that could work. Like, obviously the draw your second card each turn on your turn is going to be a lot easier because you're drawing your card per turn. You can do it on your opponent's turns as well, where I have a sad robot, right? I sacrifice my sad robot. When it dies, I get to draw a card, and also you're drawing a card from this ability. So just doing that is going to trigger your commander and get you that second card draw, and also get you the second card draw for any other triggers you have with all those other draw your second card each turn things, right? So if you put a lot of creatures in this deck that when they die, I don't know how many there are, there's got to be a few. When they die, you get to draw a card. Now, just by sacrificing that creature, I am now drawing 2 cards, and I get to trigger my commander's ability on my opponent's turns as well, right? This is each turn, so doing it on your opponent's turn is going to be great. Our commander has a tapping ability, so any untappers is also going to be really nice here as well. Oh man, you know what would be funny? Faces of the Past. I talked about that in my crazy blue enchantments video. That's untapping creatures when a creature dies. I wonder if you could work something out here with that. That would be a funny fit in this deck. Maybe someone could work that out. Draw cards, obviously always great. Lots you can do there, as I already talked about. Draw triggers and all that good stuff. You're doing the dice trigger thing as well. Anything that just says, like Dark Prophecy, again, very easy to build around here. Any of my creatures dying now, I get to draw a card anyway. So that on its own is going to make sure I'm drawing that second card. So drawing a lot of cards. And again, Dark Prophecy is extra good. Or Erebos is another one where Erebos, I am paying 2 life to get the card draw, but I'm gaining life, right? Whenever I get that second card draw, I've now gained the 2 life back. So there's really no downside here. Boy. And you're putting the lands into play. That's another thing you could build around is making extra land drops, landfall stuff. If you have 8 or more lands, you get to do it again. At first glance, I was like, okay, these two abilities aren't really working with each other great. Maybe they are, actually. Maybe they are. Because the Aristocrats theme with the drawing cards might not seem on its face to work great together, but man, there's a lot you can do here. Wow. And Sultai colors. So this, I think, is going to be a popular commander in the format for sure. All right, last one today. And I had already looked at this one, and this really pretty basic, but it's a great commander. Ortheon, Hero of Lavabrink, 3 and a red human soldier, 3/3. And this is really just a fantastic mono red commander. And Brask is a pretty fantastic mono red commander as well. And interestingly enough, I was looking at the commanders on EDH Rec and I'm like, I wonder which color has changed the most since I started playing Commander. And mono red was the one that I think had changed the least. I mean, Krenko is still the number one mono red commander. I don't know if that will ever change. It's been that way since before I started playing Commander, right? There has been, I think, the least amount of change in the mono red commanders. Like mono white has changed a ton. All the mono white commanders that are the most popular ones in the format are all new. Mono red has changed the least, and we got a couple of great mono red commanders here that I think are going to change things up a little in mono red. So 3 and a red human soldier, 3/3. Pay 1 in a red and tap. Create a token that's a copy of another target creature you control. It gains haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Activate only as a sorcery. That's a fantastic ability that you could do a ton with. We already have a lot of support, and there's even other commanders, obviously, that are doing the mono red, I create token copies of my creature thing. And the sacrifice, again, is really, really important for a number of reasons. Again, Humble Defector is not a great fit here. I talked about this in my Wrong Cards video recently. I mean, you could do it, but Humble Defector, you're going to tap it to draw 2 cards when you create the token copy, and you are going to donate it, and it is going to stay donated. It will not get sacrificed, for those who are wondering. But the sacrifice part does work great with a card like Solemn Simulacrum, right? Again, man, that card's great. It's one of my favorite cards of all time. That's why I keep mentioning it in videos. I create a token copy of it at ETBs. I get to go get a land, and then it gets sacrificed at the beginning of the next end step. And then I get the card draw off of it as well, right? Feldon, obviously, which is doing something very similar, is probably going to be a slam dunk in this deck as well, because any of those creatures that you're already doing this with, like your Sad Robot, when they die and go to the graveyard, right? Obviously, the token copy you don't care about when the original dies, because of course your creatures are eventually going to die. Now, Feldon is almost like a secondary game plan for this deck, a backup for this deck, where now, after my graveyard's been filled up a little bit, I can throw my Feldon down and basically start doing exactly what my commander's doing, but in sort of reverse or from the graveyard, right? And getting the exact same value. So I think that's a slam dunk in this deck. We got another ability. Like that ability you can build a ton around. The second ability also just sort of like added bonus, just sort of gravy on your commander, I think. 6 red, 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 and tap. So a really expensive ability that you're probably only going to be doing maybe once a game. 9 mana's a lot. Create 5 tokens that are copies of another target creature you control. They gain haste. Sacrifice them at the beginning of the next end step. Activate only as a sorcery. So again, I could create 5 tokens of token copies of my Sad Robot, get a whole bunch of lands, get a whole bunch of card draw. I think that's great. Obviously, I think people are probably going to want to create 5 tokens, copies of bigger creatures to help. Like that would be your win con in this deck. I would definitely do the value he plays here, like the Sad Robot. But you could also do the, I don't know, Bogart and Hellkite maybe. Again, has a really nice ETB, but it's also a big creature that I can swing with, right? And if I create 5 tokens that are copies of it, now I'm going to get all those great ETBs, throw a bunch of damage around, kill a bunch of my opponent's creatures, and I also get to swing with my whole giant team of dragons and probably knock out a player with it as well. So I would, yes, you want to concentrate on probably the ETB dice trigger thing, but you can do it in big creature form as well because it works extra good. It works with your commander's first ability, works extra good. Like 9 mana, I create 5 token copies of my Sad Robot is okay, but I probably would want that oomph. I would want that. I create a token copy of a giant creature that gives me a really nice ETB, and then also I can swing with it and probably knock out a player. Really great commander. This is a great, really fantastic mono red commander. I'm sure a lot of people are excited about this one. A lot of really great commanders in this video. I was pretty impressed with all of them, to be quite honest. And that's kind of why I wanted to make another video. I want to talk about that Brask, but I also wanted to talk about a few of these that I had already looked at. Some of these I had already taken a good look at before I talked about them. Others I had not. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below of some of these fantastic new commanders, though. That is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.